Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the fascinating historical teachings of Jesus to extract a really practical six-part framework for finding inner fortitude. Whether you're coming at this from a theological perspective or you're just interested in studying ancient wisdom, there's actually an incredibly structured playbook here for building resilience when life gets unimaginably tough. Because let's face it, we all hit those moments when our emotional or physical strength just completely runs dry. We hit a brick wall against these modern giants we face, things like financial crises, emotional burnout, or health struggles. But what's super interesting here is how the source material frames this whole problem. We tend to think of burnout as this very modern phenomenon, right? Yet this ancient text offers a proven solution that tackles the exact same human exhaustion that we feel today. So let's dive right into this structured playbook and explore the 6 definitive pillars Jesus modeled to overcome adversity. We're going to cover trusting God, praying constantly, serving others, having faith, forgiving wholeheartedly, and accepting God's will.
All right, starting off with pillar number 1, trusting God.
This very first secret kind of flips worldly logic entirely on its head because it demands complete trust during our most fragile moments. The source text gives us this fascinating example. After fasting for 40 days and 40 nights out in the wilderness, Jesus was, as you can imagine, completely physically depleted and starving, and he was tested with this temptation to just turn stones into bread. But instead of grasping for that quick physical fix, he relied on the word of God. He didn't place his trust in what was visible right in front of him, but in something far deeper. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between desperately trying to solve everything ourselves and drawing power from unwavering trust. The source material compares this to the classic story of David facing Goliath. Think about it. David didn't look at his own human strength, his sword or his javelin. Actually, he didn't even have those things. Instead, he waited on the Lord for renewed strength, drawing his power from a higher source to face a heavily armored giant that was, mathematically speaking, impossible to beat on his own.
Moving right along to the second pillar, praying constantly.
The really key takeaway here is that prayer isn't just some emergency button you smash when things go horribly wrong. It's a continuous lifeline. Jesus practiced this intensely. He frequently withdrew to solitary places just to recharge, and he even provided a highly structured template for this in the Lord's Prayer. If you look closely, notice how it hits all the crucial marks: revering God, seeking his will, asking for daily provision, pleading for forgiveness, and asking for protection. It's literally a complete system for mental and spiritual resilience.
But it wasn't just some daily routine. In the Garden of Gethsemane, facing just unimaginable anguish, he prayed 3 times. His disciples, on the other hand, who didn't pray, they literally fell asleep from sheer fatigue and were totally confused when trouble actually arrived. Jesus, however, demonstrated that persistent dialogue renews our spirit right when we're tempted to give up, and that allowed him to face the ultimate trial with total clarity.
Which brings us to our third pillar, serving others.
Now, this pillar presents a bit of a paradox. You might naturally think that giving your energy away leaves you with less, right? But the text argues it actually builds personal resilience rather than depleting it. Look at this contrast. Worldly greatness is all about climbing the ladder so you can be served. True greatness, that's kneeling down to serve. By humbly washing his disciples' feet, which by the way was a task usually reserved for the absolute lowest servant, Jesus showed that true greatness lies in empathy. Doing this shifts our focus completely away from our own anxieties, grounding us in compassion.
And just think about the absolute logistical nightmare of feeding 5,000 people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. I mean, wow. By choosing to serve the needs of a massive crowd with those seemingly impossible limitations, he proved that acting selflessly, without expecting anything in return, profoundly renews our inner courage and actually invites a provision we couldn't possibly foresee.
Okay, the 4th secret in our ancient blueprint is having faith.
And we're not talking about a passive, fair weather kind of faith here. This is about having active faith precisely when the storms of life hit and that natural panic sets in. Imagine being trapped in a boat during a violent storm. The waves are crashing in, you're convinced you're going down, and Jesus was literally sleeping through this. When he woke up, he challenged his disciples' fear with this exact question. It serves as a powerful reminder to them and to us that faith is the anchor that keeps us grounded and peaceful when everything else in our environment is completely crumbling apart. The crazy part? You don't even need massive amounts of it. The source shares the incredible story of a woman who suffered from a severe illness for 12 grueling years. She'd spent everything she had on treatments, with 0 success. Yet, the text states she was healed simply by touching the edge of his garment.
Her story, along with that famous teaching that faith the size of a tiny mustard seed can move mountains, proves that resilience isn't about the sheer volume of your faith. It's about where you place it.
Let's move on to the fifth pillar, which is, let's be honest, probably the hardest one of all: forgiving wholeheartedly.
The framework points out that refusing to forgive actually turns into this heavy, toxic prison of resentment that completely destroys our own resilience. And talk about the ultimate test here. Even while suffering the absolute ultimate injustice and physical agony on the cross, Jesus forgave his executioners. This radically demonstrates that forgiveness is absolutely not a sign of weakness, and it doesn't minimize the offense. Instead, releasing that bitterness is just an immense display of spiritual power and total emotional freedom. And it's an ongoing practice too. When Peter asked if forgiving someone 7 times was enough, Jesus essentially said, no, forgive them 77 times. It's a continuous mindset shift. The source material brilliantly illustrates this in the story of Joseph, who completely forgave the brothers who had betrayed him and sold him into slavery. He turned a massive, deep trauma into a story of ultimate family reconciliation. Jesus was actually so serious about this that he mapped out a concrete 3-step process for it. If you're about to offer a gift to God and suddenly remember a conflict, step 1 is literally to leave the gift right there. Step 2 is to actively go and reconcile. And only then do you come back to complete step 3. It clearly shows that active reconciliation must absolutely precede our own spiritual progress.
Finally, we arrive at our 6th pillar: accepting God's will. This culminates in the ultimate act of surrender, acknowledging that a higher plan is perfect even when it completely defies our immediate desires or logic. True resilience is letting go of that really tight grip we have on our own expectations. The sources show us Abraham, who was asked to do the incomprehensible by sacrificing his son, only to be stopped at the last possible second once his absolute trust was proven. Or Jesus in the garden, praying, "Not my will, but yours be done." It's total surrender to a higher purpose, even when the path is incredibly painful. And just look at Job. Job modeled this perfectly after losing absolutely everything: his health, his wealth, his family, the whole shebang. And yet he still uttered these incredible words. His story proves that waiting patiently for the Lord and accepting the seasons of loss right alongside the seasons of abundance builds this unshakable faith that survives literally the hardest blows imaginable. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, when we pull all this together and apply these ancient teachings to our modern lives, a really profound shift happens. We stop exhausting ourselves by fighting the circumstances we simply can't control. Instead, we start building true inner fortitude, using a proven framework that holds up against absolutely any financial, physical, or emotional giant we might face out there. These 6 powerful secrets: trusting in God, praying constantly, serving others, having faith, forgiving wholeheartedly, and accepting a higher will, they are just as vital right now as they were millennia ago. So as you leave this explainer today and head back out to face your own daily challenges, I want you to ask yourself one final question. Which of these 6 pillars are you going to lean on to renew your strength right now?